I'm Eli Kintisch. I'm a contributing correspondent at Science Magazine, and I write primarily about the Arctic and the changes that are affecting people who live north of the Arctic Circle, as well as the billions of us who live far from the Arctic Circle. I focused in this project on the warming soils in the Arctic. More than 1 trillion tons of carbon is found in frozen permafrost north of the Arctic Circle. And that carbon could have a profound effect on the temperature of the planet over the next 100 to 1,000 years. At Science Magazine, I've been covering climate change for 8-9 years, but mostly from my desk here in Washington. I wanted to go to places where the impacts of climate are so acute that they're changing people's daily lives. In Alaska, whole villages are disappearing. There's a lot of changes in terms of how species that people hunt in Alaska behave. And so those changing conditions are affecting people's ability to collect food for their families. Archaeological sites are in real danger because Native Alaskan people for thousands of years have hunted along the ocean. Fish, birds, seals, polar bear. And so archaeologists are very keen on studying the history of Native people in Alaska. The problem is these coastal archaeological sites are getting much less protection than they used to by ice which used to ring the coast of Alaska. Now that ice is less robust than it used to be, a lot more storms are bringing water up onto the beach and destroying these archaeological sites.
Because by the time you get done messing with the first part, it's gone.
It's a kind of like tragedy in slow motion that this vast store of data, this almost library of this cultural heritage, is getting destroyed by climate change. In Siberia, scientists have a front row seat to climate change. The Arctic is warming twice as fast as the rest of the planet. I spent time in Cherskiy with an Arctic scientist named Sergei Zimov. He was the first to really focus on the risk of all this carbon in the Arctic being released. More than 1 trillion tons of carbon locked in these frozen soils. But he didn't just identify the problem, he also proposed this radical solution wherein he brought hundreds of animals from all over Asia and Europe to this remote place in Siberia to try to recreate this ancient ecosystem. The hope is that through Zimov's idea, the permafrost could be protected, preserving all that carbon in the ground by the spread of grasslands. And his vision is to have millions of herbivores, horses, sheep, moose, oxen, roaming the Arctic, maintaining these grassy areas. On one hand, the Arctic feels very far away from us. But on the other hand, we can learn a lot about the Arctic, and the Arctic may in fact be affecting us in ways we don't appreciate. Firstly, the 4 million people who live north of the Arctic Circle are experiencing twice as much warming as the rest of us. There's a ton more coastal erosion there, and storms have a much greater effect because of the rising seas. As the permafrost thaws, billions of tons of carbon, which so far has been locked in that Arctic soil, could be released. Weather patterns here in the warmer parts of the planet may be affected by the thawing Arctic. So as the Arctic warms up, we may be seeing more extreme weather because of changes in global weather patterns. So what happens in the Arctic, as one scientist told me, may be felt many, many thousands of miles away.